hold your horses, because it's time for Richard Tice. Now, nearly 9 in 10 constituencies want immigration levels reduced. This is according to a recent survey. But despite this, the public have seriously underestimated how many migrants come through our borders, guessing that it is 10 times lower than the 672,000 that actually came into the UK. Now, seriously, apparently more than 50% of the public thought that net migration to the UK was 10 times lower than it is. And 9 in 10 constituencies still wanted it reduced. I've got to be honest with you, I love the British public, but I do not think there's any excuse any longer for not knowing the amount of people coming into this country and what a disgrace that is. Reporter Anna Riley has been gathering opinion from locals in Rochdale.
So my figure's about 45,000.
It's hundreds of thousands. Of course it is.
Thousands and thousands.
About 4 million.
What would you do if I said the figure is actually 672,000?
I'd be shocked. I'd be quite shocked.
Crikey. It's a right load, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely insane. I'm joined now by Reform leader Richard Tice. Richard, look, thank you very much. What do you make of the public thinking that we have about 10 times lower the level of net migration than we actually do?
Good evening, Patrick. Well, it's a sign that essentially the mainstream media have deliberately underreported the huge scale of what is actually mass immigration in recent years under a Conservative regime that we've now had for 14 years, where Prime Minister after Prime Minister after Home Secretary after Home Secretary lied to us and said they were going to bring immigration numbers down, and actually they've willfully, deliberately opened the borders to mass immigration. You've said it there, though, Patrick. 90% of all constituencies want lower immigration. And if you want lower immigration, the only party that will freeze all non-essential immigration, Patrick, is Reform UK. And that's why the bombshell poll out this morning, 14,000 adults, that's why we're going up in the polls, and we are going to have a massive, massive difference at this general election.
Well, I've got to say that, to be fair, Richard, you are going to have a massive difference as things stand. That difference, though, might actually be letting Labour into Downing Street. You know, this poll said that the Reform Party...
But hang on, Patrick. No, I'm going to stop you there because it's so boring, this ridiculous narrative.
Well, it's not ridiculous. Look, we get on well, but it's not ridiculous. You're going to take a load of seats off the Tories, potentially, or you're going to lose the Tories a load of seats.
No, Patrick, you have to punish absolute failure. You have to punish people that deliberately lie to the British people, change the way our culture is, because they've allowed mass immigration, uncontrolled, in direct lies to what they promised us.
But what if that means a Labour government, Richard?
They're as bad as each other. They're both pro-mass immigration. They've both got the highest taxes. They're both pro more regulation, more government spending. This lot are socialists. Starmer, who I call Starmageddon, is also a socialist. Socialism is a disaster. It's a catastrophic cocktail. But, Patrick, there's no difference between the two. This lot have broken Britain, and it's now only Reform UK that can save Britain. And that's the positive message we're getting out there to the British people. And that, Patrick, is why we're going up in the polls and why the Tories, quite rightly, are absolutely terrified.
Yeah, so, I mean, Labour are saying the polls are forecasting a 120-seat majority if Reform succeed in dragging voters away from the Tories. I know that you clearly think that, you know, they're as bad as each other and that the Tories deserve a kicking over their failures. And many people will agree with you for that. But is it not a concern that Britain, as a result, could end up getting worse? Not just on immigration, but on the kind of social issues that Keir Starmer stands for, that the Labour Party stands for. Look at where the party is on Palestine, for example, you know, that you could let that in.
Patrick, the premise of your question is that the Conservatives have done a good job and are competent. They are useless, they're incompetent, they've broken Britain, they have to be punished. Let me tell you, Patrick, we did the right thing 4 years ago, right? We stood aside to give Boris Johnson an 80-seat majority to do Brexit properly and to drive this country forward. They've utterly failed. They've lied to us. Frankly, if they had any moral decency or integrity, they would do the right thing for Britain. They would stand aside. And I'm telling you, 7 days a week, I beat Keir Starmer in a head-to-head without fail. It's time they stood aside and did the right thing for the country. The country is sick of the toxic Tories.
OK, Richard, thank you very, very much. That is Richard Tice there, who is certainly... look, he's out in Cumbria. Actually, Richard, sorry, just quickly, mate, just quickly. Are you in Cumbria? Is that right? That's what it says here. What are you doing?
I've been campaigning in Cumbria. I've been campaigning in Skipton. I'm all over the country. You know, we've got a job to do. We've got to save Britain, Patrick. I'm everywhere.
You're everywhere.
Back in the studios in a few hours' time. Don't you worry. I'm everywhere. We're going to shape and influence.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about, whether or not I was going to have to cover one of your shows at some point. Richard, thank you very much. You take care. All right, Richard Tice there.